Oh, that's right.
The process to write.
Yeah. So it's going through that again. Now it's preparing.
I've got a sign saying it's live, but
Okay, and it should be live.
really?
Streaming live, yes. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I am Dave Smythe, owner of Out of This World Home Services. Today is May 22nd, and this is part of our Q&A series that we're going to be doing all around plumbing. And so if you'd like to chime in with a few questions as you're seeing along, I'm going to keep this to about half an hour or less. And okay, sorry, I'm just trying to find my Facebook.
Right, you're on and you're good to go.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anything on Facebook. So Wendy's here with me to ask me questions as we're going forward. As they crop up on the Facebook feed, Wendy will ask along here. Just so you are aware, if there are any questions that crop up, as this is a Zoom meeting that's also being published to Facebook Live. If you have any questions on Facebook, there will be a slight delay before I actually or Wendy will get to see them, and therefore we'll go. So with that in mind, welcome to this question and answer session. And let's get the first question, please, Wendy.
All right, question one. What must I be most concerned about in my home when it comes to plumbing?
What a great question that is. The main thing to be concerned about with the plumbing, in my opinion, would be to ensure that you know how to turn the water off in the case there is an emergency. As far as drains backing up, there may be limited control on that, but generally speaking, if you put something down the drain or you have a leakage problem, you need to shut water off. So it's knowing where your main valve is in your house. And once you know that, ensuring that you are able to turn it off. And whether it's you or whether it's someone who's in the house, so whether it's children, whether you're a single person, whether you're older and have joint issues, you need to be able to access and get hold of this valve. And just as an extra tip on there, in most cases, this valve is located towards the front of your property or the street side, usually in the basement level center. If you happen to be in a townhouse, that's likely to be above your head, probably somewhere towards the middle of the property. And ideally, it's going to be a small handle style or potentially a lever, in which case you can just turn it off. But you need to identify where that is. If, of course, anybody has a problem with that, then they can contact their plumber of choice and they'll be able to identify it for them.
And hot water tanks we were talking about as well.
Yeah, well, hot water tanks certainly are another useful piece. Generally speaking, that's more from if someone's having a problem with their hot water, either they don't have any, it's not enough, or there's no flow, or if there's any leaks around the hot water tank. It's a good piece of the property to keep exposed, clean, enable access around. It's got a few safety devices on it that need to be ensured that they're clean and accessible. And that's pretty much it for the hot water tanks.
Okay, question two. Why can't I pour grease down my drain? I use hot water to flush it.
Well, there's a couple of good points in there. So grease, oils, and any other really fatty products are not supposed to go down the drain. It's not to say that they can't be taken care of as an organic material. It's more the fact that the grease, fats, and oils tend to become thicker or they gel together when they cool down within the pipes. So if someone is using that and running hot water, what they tend to be doing is taking all this oil and running it down in their pipes and they're running hot water, what the hot water does, it keeps the temperature elevated, which allows the fats, oils, and greases to essentially stay fluid more longer, so that it'll actually go further down your drain and then cause a problem somewhere else. If you're really lucky, what you're doing is you're putting this fats, oils, and grease out into the main sewer, and so you're flooding someone else's basement over time whenever that blockage gets big enough, or perhaps your own. If you don't have the water that hot, then what happens is, rather than blocking the drain right by, say, your sink or wherever you're emptying it, it's going to go into your basement or somewhere else where it can cool down, solidify, and then create a blockage there, which could show up as a backup from a floor drain or from a main drain or some other opening within the house. So generally speaking, that's why we don't like seeing those go down. As far as a drain cleaning aspect goes, they're not always the easiest to clean up or sort out, because the machines tend to go through some of the grease and fats depending on how they're built up in the line, and may not clear them out thoroughly, or might just go right past them without actually showing any signs of doing anything. They can be jetted out though, which is generally the best way to get a grease blockage sorted out.
Any advice on coffee grounds going down the sink?
Coffee grinds. Okay, so coffee grinds are the seemingly harmless, deadly items to go down a drain. And what I mean by that is, coffee grinds are great. We use a lot of them in brewing coffees, because that's what is the preferred drink in North America. And the grinds on their own generally aren't that bad. In small amounts, they're great, and they sort of just move about in the water. So if you're pouring them down and running water, they will move. But what happens is the grains themselves are actually quite dense and heavy. And so they'll move and they'll seem to float around in the water. And then once they get to a certain point, they'll actually stop and drop out. And once they do that, they sit there, and it takes a lot more flow or pressure to move those along. And so what that means is that pouring one pot or set of coffee grinds down your drain is probably not going to be an issue, because they'll sort of spread out over a space. But once you do that a couple of times, there'll be a gradual mound of coffee grinds that will build up that will just stop the flow. And the way that'll get noticed usually is that the drain will actually be quite slow, because just like in your percolator, the water is actually going to try and find its way through the coffee, but it's going to take a while. But once that sort of happens, and you start getting other particles of food or grit or other things in the drain, it becomes blocked, and that's it. And then the drain will need cleaning or taken apart. But the other thing is surprisingly, the grains are also, once they get in there, they'll compact and solidify quite well. So they actually become fairly hard over time as well. So they require a little bit of work to clean up.
The best place for that would be the green bin.
Yes, and that's what I was going to suggest. Take your coffee grinds, put them in the green bin, or if you really would like to, put them in a little paper bag, take them home and spread them across your garden, because they're great for vegetables and plants.
And oils can go in a green bin too, right?
Yes. One of the great things about the green bin is it will take all food particles, oils, greases. The oils might be less of an obvious one, just because it's like, well, why am I pouring liquid into this green bin or one of the bags to go in it? But the thing is that's great. It's an organic thing. It actually helps work and break down a lot of the foods and particles of foods that are in there, but also helps that stuff actually slide out of the bin at the end of the week or this period. So put your grease, oils, and fats in your green bin, and recycle them responsibly for the environment.
And not down the drain.
And not down the drain, that's right.
Okay, so what's the best way to unclog a toilet?
The best way to unclog a toilet? Well, there can be lots of ways to unclog a toilet. The most common approach is going to be the plunger. A plunger is the rubber cup on a stick, for those who don't know. And the idea is that in most cases it's seen in films that someone grabbing the stick and they're pushing down on the water or whatever the blockage is in the toilet. In actual fact, what's supposed to happen, the way it's supposed to work, is that you push it down slowly, and then you use the cup that's under there actually as a suction piece to essentially pull back the blockage or change the flow, so that you create a little vacuum within the toilet just to loosen things up, and then the water or solids or whatever's in there should flow out at that point. I like that because it's quick and simple. Generally, it saves money if a plumber's coming out to do it, because it's a less costly approach to anything else. The next best is going to be sticking an auger, which is essentially usually a hand-powered snake to run through the different bends within the toilet. And the only problem I have with that is it would appear to be a better way of clearing a blockage from a toilet. Can usually get more difficult, harder blockages than say a plunger would. But the thing that I've come across from an experience standpoint is that there can be a number of items over time that fall into a toilet and that aren't supposed to be there. So they don't come from the body. So they can be bottle caps, Q-tips, shells, nuts. I see all sorts of weird things that have gone into toilets. And some of these items can actually, there's a little hole at the bottom of the toilet. And so these items can come across and actually cover this hole in such a way that they catch toilet paper, feces, and other things that are supposed to go in the toilet and create a blockage. And when the snake comes wiggling its way through and goes in here, it clears the blockage, but all it does is it pushes this little thing that's in there across to the side. And so it's still in there. It hasn't actually moved through the toilet. So the toilet will then have blockages more often. So usually when I'm in someone's house, I will ask the question, say, hey, is this something that happens often, or is it the first time in 6 months? Because if it's the first time in a period, in over a longer period of time, then I can probably get away with an auger if there doesn't seem to be that they've known something odd has fallen in the toilet, in which case the auger is good. And then we can go up a scale and say the ultimate way of cleaning a toilet is to actually disconnect the toilet, take it off its connection piece with the floor, the flange, and have a bigger machine go through the toilet. But you can also inspect the toilet at that point to make sure there's nothing in there blocking it that shouldn't be. And usually this would come after plunging or putting an auger through. Usually this wouldn't be the first thing I jump at. It would be more of, okay, your toilet's been having problems. This is something you've had to clear every couple of days for the last month, and you're getting sick and tired of your toilet blocking. So this is what we need to do next. And that would be kind of the route that I'd go on that front. So personal preference for a quick and easy one, and certainly for general homeowners, is that the plunger would be a good fit. You can actually get some nice decorative plungers that don't look terrible. Sitting in the corner, you can find some little pots to sort of stick them in so they don't seem unsightly. And that's generally the way to kind of go on that front.
So,
yeah.
Just audience a little quick rundown of what you have found in the toilets in your 16 years of plumbing. Give me a handful of things that you've found.
Well, okay, apart from the obvious organic matter, which I don't need to really talk to, let's see. I've had, as I said, Q-tips, perfume bottles, perfume bottle caps. I've had the toilet roll holders, or the squishy extension things. Oh, candles. I've had candles in there. Seashells. And it's not that the toilet's by the seaside. It's the fact that people have kept a bowl of shells either on a shelf above or on the top of the toilet itself. Let's see. There was a child's like rubber toy that seemed to be looked like it almost was like a thick balloon, but it sort of seemed to be one of these rubber dinosaurs or something like that that got in, stuck in the bends. So I've come across the figures, the action figures have gone down as well. I think I snaked a teacup once out of a little plastic teacup, not an actual Wedgwood china teacup or anything, but.
Wasn't there false teeth once?
Oh yes, yes, I've had false teeth. Oh yes, and one of the fun calls I went on once was actually a cell phone, and that was interesting because it wasn't the homeowner's cell phone; it was one of his friends, and no one actually told them that they'd lost their phone, even though their phone was in the toilet. So it's kind of what happened on that one, and why wouldn't they admit to it or say anything? So needless to say, when we got it out, the phone didn't work anymore. What are the other weird ones? Yeah, I've actually been surprised by some of the things that have gone into the toilet and how far they've actually gotten. Just from how they move around, you're going, well, physically, this is bigger than the opening. How does it actually go in? Or it's longer. It just doesn't make sense. So, yeah, I've seen some weird and wonderful things. In most cases, an item's going to block the toilet, and if it doesn't block the toilet initially, there's a good chance that it's actually going to get into the drain line, which is bigger. And so in some cases, if it gets that far, it's more likely to go away. But if it's a heavier item, it'll sit, and then now it's in the drain, ready to catch something else within the drain lines. And it just dawned on me that one of the more dangerous items I had was actually clearing out a toilet to find a knife in the toilet poking out at me when I was getting down to clear the last droplets of water out, and it looked like a paring knife or something like that was in. I'm kind of like, what's this doing in the toilet? But anyway, yeah, weird things. And when we get into the drains, we can have some bigger items that in there, but they may or may not have gotten in through the toilet. So,
well, that could be a question for the future about the main drains and what you found down them. So the last question would be, why does my basement sometimes smell of sewage?
okay. So sewer smells, that's an interesting one. Generally, it's not pleasant if they're noticed. The more common thought for a smell that you wouldn't catch on a regular basis would be that a trap has dried up somewhere. And so for this, it may not just be the basement. It could be anywhere in the house. So if a trap is sort of like this little U-bend piece that's under the, say, a sink or something like that, and water goes in and sits in here. And the purpose of the trap is to stop sewer gas actually coming out of the drains and back up through the sink and smelling up the area. Generally speaking, if people are using their plumbing fixtures and appliances, the water that runs through there keeps these primed, and so they don't end up allowing sewer gas to come back into the house. But if there's, say, a laundry tub that's in your house that could be in the basement, this might be something that doesn't get used very often, in which case the water that's in this trap could evaporate, and then there's a possibility of sewer gas coming out. Or a basement specifically, the more common ones would be the laundry tub if the laundry's down in the basement. It could be the floor drain, and this will vary or can vary depending on the age of house or the condition of the parts. So on an older home, the floor drains were connected to the main drain of the house. Generally speaking, there wouldn't be much water going into it unless people were mopping the floors or water was spilled or something, which is the purpose of having the floor drain, to clean that mess up. But they wouldn't have what they call a primer on them. So there's no way really to refill the trap. And so, like in real old homes, it was just that it was so close to the main drain that it would fill just from the virtue of the volume of water that was in there. In more modern homes, there's actually a device referred to as the trap primer, which sends a little spot of water into the floor drain at somewhat regular intervals, or when another plumbing fixture is used, and that stops that from smelling. But the smell itself usually comes from a trap being dried up. If it's a regular occurrence, there could also be that there's a pipe in the basement that has been disconnected that is allowing sewer gas to flow through the house. And The other thing with sewer gas is you can walk into any house anywhere and have no water in any of the traps, and the house smells perfectly fine. And the next day it could stink quite heavily, and it's all to do with the difference in air pressure. So usually there's a pipe that comes out through a roof in a house, and as airflow goes over the house, it basically creates a bit of a vacuum and sucks this air out. But if I've got two houses on either side of a street here, air actually flows into the pipe one side and comes out on the other side of the street. And so one side where I'm sort of at a negative pressure, I won't smell anything. And on the other side of the street, if I have an open drain, I'm literally forcing sewer gas through this mechanism up into the house. And so people can have open drains for months and have one particular day in the month, say on a windy day, where the house stinks, and the rest of the time they won't notice it. But it doesn't mean to say the sewer gas can't come back into the house. So if you happen to notice sewer gas in a big way in say a basement or in a particular area of the house, it's most likely a disconnected pipe or an empty trap. And so it's a simple fix. It's just a matter of pouring water down the drain, down the floor drain, the appliance, the fixture trap itself, and that will basically reprime it, and the smell will dissipate in a short space of time. And that's pretty much it. I don't know if anything has anything else come in, Wendy? No? Okay. Is there any other things that you feel I could speak to the public about?
I think so. I think we'll wrap it up here, and we can get some more questions on Facebook for next time, and we can make a bit of a series.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Wendy, for ask me the questions. Thank you for joining me and myself and Wendy from Out of This World Home Plumbing here with our Q&A session today. If you have further questions, please submit them. You can send them via email to solutions@outofthisworldhomeservices.com, or you can certainly ask a question on our Facebook page. If you really would like to speak to someone about it, you can call up to the office, ask them a question. If you can't get an answer straight away, they can put it in the pot for future questions as we had today. And so with that, thank you again for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for this Q&A session. I'm Dave with Out of This World Home Services, and I will see you on the next session.